Good morning. This video is a response to a video by Anna Cantervad called Vegetarianism and Ethics 1, in which you're talking about what I take to be what you see as the hypocrisy that a person might have if they hold a particular belief, for example, a belief that the harm of animals, particularly for the consumption of meat, is wrong. If a person holds that belief, then they should also hold, you seem to think, a belief that that the state should mandate for their belief and make what they believe to be compulsory. And you seem to be suggesting that if a person doesn't hold a belief to that degree, or if they hold that belief and don't think that that belief should be mandated as law, then they're in some ways hypocritical. I don't see that. I see there is a lot of hypocrisy, and I think we're all hypocrites on some level. But I do think that there are cases in which different moral precepts are in conflict with one another, and this is an example of that. So, for example, for my own case, I have certain kind of moral understandings about the ethical treatment of animals which prevent me from eating meat. But I have also other moral precepts about freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of conscience, and also beliefs about how coercion should work within the state, the limits of coercion, about how restrictions should be imposed, what kinds of political systems should be in place in order to facilitate the maximum freedoms for the maximum number of people, whilst also preserving rights and dignities of people involved and indeed other creatures. And the idea that holding a single belief, in this case the belief that vegetarianism is a good idea, doesn't naturally lead to the overthrow of one's other moral beliefs about the way that freedom should operate in a society. I've seen this argument made before, to be honest, Andy. I've seen it applied to feminists, I've seen it applied to atheists, I've seen it applied to religious folk. The idea that if a person holds a belief, then they're just one step away from making it mandatory in a society. And of course there are some people like that. You know, there are antinatalists on YouTube, there are feminists I've seen around the place, there are I believe it's in all strata racists, people who believe in all these kinds of ideologies, let's say. And sure, those people, if they had the power, would undoubtedly become dictators and would mandate their beliefs into law. But I think most people who hold those beliefs recognise that beliefs are held within the framework of ideological systems, political systems, in which their own beliefs, their own power should be limited. You know, my power to force another person to adopt my beliefs has to be limited by the organisation of the state to which I belong. And I think that's absolutely right. I would want my freedoms, my political freedoms, to be limited in that kind of way. I would want my capacity to force another person to adopt my beliefs to be restricted and contained within proper political processes. And I think the one or two people who hold beliefs strongly and apparently are fascistic enough to want to institute a police state should the need arise, should the possibility arise, in order to be able to put those beliefs, to make those beliefs forced on other folk. I think they're a tiny minority. And the idea that if you're a vegetarian, then necessarily you support a kind of Sharia kind of imposition of those beliefs on the wider world is, I think it's bogus, to be honest, Andy. These are competing moral precepts. A moral precept to do with one's diet and the ethical treatment of animals, and a moral precept about how society should function and how decisions should be made. And yes, these things are often in conflict, as many other moral precepts are. A lot of us are caught on the horns of all kinds of moral dilemmas a lot of the time. You know, life isn't simple, thankfully. So, yeah, thanks very much, and Happy New Year to you all.